I'm with Tom Jennings, VP of Member Services at the WFCA, the World Floor Covering Association. Tom, how are you?
Dave, I'm well. How about yourself?
I should say I'm very well, very
Good.
well.
Thank you for asking.
You travel all the time. You're on the road all the time, seems to me.
Seems like it. Yeah, a lot.
Well,
Yeah.
you're talking to a lot of retailers. I'm curious what you're finding, what you're hearing from these retailers. How would you describe the attitudes that you're hearing?
The attitude's basically, business in most of the areas that I had visited and dealers I've talked to around the country, business is bouncing back pretty decently. Sometimes it seems like business is bouncing back a little better than margins. That's always to be expected. Whenever times have been slow, customers have been used to getting, maybe some extraordinary deals and extraordinary offers, things that dealers took a couple of years ago price-wise in order to stay in business, stay afloat. Some buyers never seem to forget a price. So I find that getting the margins back where they need to be is still a challenge. The other challenge that I really hear and everywhere I go is just lack of qualified installers. A dealer we were talking with just yesterday said it's so frustrating because, I kept the place going for 3 or 4 years, just out of hope, and now I got more business than I can facilitate. It's frustrating to have the business and not be able to get it moved out the back door.
Of course, that's been a problem. I've been around a long time in this industry, and I heard that day one entering here, and it seems like nothing has really changed.
Nothing's really changed, Dave, and I have a saying I've used many years, and that's inspect what you expect. And quite frankly, our industry should expect nothing, because that's just about what the industry as a whole has put into, growing the next generation of installers. And if I sound frustrated, it's only because I am. Whether it be from the manufacturer's level, from the retailer's level, commercial's done a better job. Commercials seems like done a pretty good job of growing their labor base. But as far as the retail, basically independent retail dealer that the WFCA represents, there's not a whole lot of foresight that's gone into growing the next generation, attracting the next generation of installers. So we've seen this coming for a while. Now that it's finally here, it's a reality, and it's frustrating. So we just grunt and go on, as I sometimes say. Now's the time to figure out, okay, that's the way things are today. How are we going to fix them, make them better for the tomorrows?
Now, I've seen, as I mentioned, I've heard the same problems from retailers and manufacturers for 35 years in this business, and nothing has gotten any better. However, I have seen lots of retailers, and when you were a retailer, you solved it for your part of the world. You had quality installation, you did what you had to do, you hired installers, you made sure that they were trained, etc. Retailers are doing that all over the country. I don't think the majority is, but I think a lot of them are. Is there anything an individual retailer can do in terms of attracting younger people into this business? It would seem like that would be awfully difficult.
It is difficult. Thank you for saying so with my own store. I often say, whether you have in-house employees or subcontract employees, they both have problems. You just decide which set of problems are more palatable to you, and maybe which set of problems, if you will, your customer's more willing to deal with. So it's not that when you have in-staff employees, on-staff employees, you don't have challenges, because obviously you do. The thing you do have is the ability to run an apprentice program, and you can grow your own, so to speak. We've all got an expiration date on our time we can, do given talents and so forth. It doesn't matter if you're a ball player or a carpet layer. There's a finite number of years that your career is going to last. So we ought to be able to take that skill and pass it on to the next generation. We've done a very poor job of that in our industry as a whole. As far as attracting the younger generation, we're looking at numerous things at WFCA we can do to help our members as far as training the next group. The reality is that it's difficult, given that many people work as subcontractors, in that, we've talked to various technical schools, trade schools, various training programs, and, the first thing that they ask about is, some sort of placement service upon graduation. Many of the things they're teaching, many of the programs they have, they've got, guaranteed job placement with an X number. We have no way to do that. When this young man or woman that we want to send into the field, when a store doesn't send them, when a manufacturer doesn't send them, when there's no assurance that they're going to go back and have a job or work for any given company, it makes for a rather hollow conversation. So, we've got to figure out ways around it. If for somebody that has, either a workroom or has on-staff installers, that becomes much easier. Put an apprentice program together, and much easier to, quite frankly, to attract the young people. Because, I keep hearing, nobody wants to work today. I don't think I really believe that. I think nobody wants to train. Nobody wants to bite the bullet and say it's going to cost this much money and take this much time to get, a productive person into the field. Yeah. And, I think that's really the question. We're going to have to devote some resources. Well, WFCA is willing to do that. We just got to figure out what the avenue is.
Well, it seems like if one wants to go into a trade and they decide that at the high school level, it would seem like floor covering would have some tough competition from plumbers, for example, or some of the technical areas. Would seem like it would be a lot less attractive to a 16, 17-year-old kid.
To some, and I know plumbers that are having the same problem too. They're having problems attracting people. Just the construction trades in general. I think you're finding a general lack of people going into the skills. I think it's a pendulum that will swing. I think people can be attracted. Unfortunately, there's too darn many people out here that got major student loan issues. That they're not going to make enough money at the job they're at to pay their loans off for years. It doesn't take too many of those stories, and people start to see that the rewards and payback are pretty quick for a skilled trade.
Yeah.
Some of these guys make, honorable money. This isn't slave labor by any stretch of the imagination. Good installers can make significant money, but they've got to be good and they got to work hard. If they're at the top half of their industry, you'd hope they're making good wages.
Yeah.
But the wages they're making really aren't the issue. I mean, it's not a low-paying field necessarily. Has their pay kept up with other parts of the industry? Maybe not. I remind people all the time, I said, much of this industry works on some form of commission. They say all the time, there's only two ways you can get a raise in this world. One's to sell what you're selling for more. The other is to sell more of what you're selling. Ideally, you'd like to do a combination of both. But when I ask people in showrooms, I say, how many times has the price gone up at wholesale or on your floor on a given product range in the last couple of years? And they say, 2, 3, 4 increases. I said, so you've got 2 or 3 or 4 raises in the last year. And they said, well, I guess so. I said, how many times have you raised your installers' wages in the last 2 years? It's just something to be mindful of. I'm not trying to be smart or make a point here, but some of our increases in our business are kind of built in for us. Price increases actually offer relief in many cases, as long as they're across the board. Installers haven't always had the benefit of that. So, no, they're not getting paid what they did, but you can still make good money installing floors.
Now, there are installers, and dozens of them, who have done exceptionally well by themselves. They've trained them, they have sought training and gotten training, and I think they also have the marketing skills to put themselves in a different category. That seems to be a real problem in the whole installation community, wouldn't you say?
Yes, you've got to be able to sell yourself. You got to be able to sell your services, and if you're an employee or if you're a subcontractor, you've got to sell yourself every morning to the ladies whose doorbell you ring. A lot of them have not had very much in the way of hand skill training. They were somebody's helper, and they picked up what they could, and then they branched out on their own. or in some cases today, the retailer encouraged them to go out on their own because they needed to increase their capacity. But very few of them have had 15 minutes worth of training as to how to approach a front door, you know, what to say, what to be carrying. It's critical. It controls the tone of the whole day. And same with exit. You know, a lot of these guys run out the door before somebody, like they're running out the door before somebody realizes they're gone. And that's a very unprofessional way to do things. So yeah, you know, installers' people skills probably are even more lacking in many cases than their hand skills.
Well, and two, people tell me that frequently they don't develop or have been taught business skills, how to manage their own business.
Where would they learn? You know, that's the problem. You know, if this were in a classroom situation, you know, that'd be one of the topics you'd at least cover. Or, you know, through the WFCA, we've looked at ways, you know, we can assist them. And not just, you know, business skills, be it accounting skills, be it, you know, availability and importance of the proper insurances, things of this nature. But under the current setup where you just work a while as somebody's helper and then you a couple $1,000s worth of truck and tools and suddenly IR one, where would they learn? And, you know, we're willing to accept that as an industry, I guess, you know, and we have been. I'm not too sure we're going to be that willing to going forward.
But that speaks to the lack of new talent coming in, all the things you talked about that are not necessarily attractive to that part of the business.
There's a lot of really good installers out there. I don't want to sound like they're all substandard because they're not.
Oh, no.
There's some really good installers. The problem is a lot of them are getting gray hair.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're just going to miss an entire generation. You know, we saw this coming 8 or 10 years ago, and then we all know what happened. You know, in 2006, everybody was crying for installers. And in 2008, they couldn't keep the ones they had busy, so they thought the problem had been solved. You know, we don't have any trouble getting our floors installed. Well, now that business is not back yet to pre-recession levels, but is approaching it in some areas, there's a smaller pool than there ever was, because now, you know, some of these guys got out. You know, they
didn't come and are not going to come
and
back.
didn't come back. Some of them just, you know, just 6, 8 years on down the calendar, you know, and they're probably not in a position to be as productive as they were.
Or they're driving a truck,
else.
or they're doing something else and aren't interested.
So, you know, first thing we got to do is, you know, make the job, I'm not even going to say more desirable. We've got to promote this as an honorable trade. We've got to, I don't think young kids even consider it. You know, if you gave them a list of 10 things that they want to do when they grow up, when they're about 15 years old, I don't think that most of them would even consider this. It's not that they wouldn't do it. It's not they wouldn't enjoy the work. There's always going to be an element of people that would rather work with their hands, that's where their skills
They don't know
are.
that there even is a classification of floor covering installers. Never thought about it unless you saw somebody installing flooring in your house.
There's nowhere to learn.
Yeah.
You know, some of the unions and all do a nice job of that, but just the typical guy that wants to work in a store such as this. And I wasn't a mile from the airport today, and I go by this big building that's a training center for the carpenters and joiners, you know, areas. I'm thinking they're in there teaching guys how to make cabinets. Now, where would you go to send somebody to teach them how to properly install a floor? If an 18-year-old kid or somebody just back from the service, for example, wanted to go, where would you send them? You know, it's not a problem that's got here overnight. It's not a problem that we fixed overnight, but I want to assure you we're thinking a lot about it. Somehow I've got tagged as the guy that gets to work with the installation issues at WFCA, so that's a challenge I'm accepting, and we'll see what we can do something about it.
So we'll keep up to date with you on that and see how the progress is.
We will, you know, and we've talked more than once about the installation standards that are finally about to be delivered. As we speak today, you know, they're in the final review stages, and, you know, pending final approval here in the next few days, then they go into ANSI review, and hopefully by the fourth quarter we'll have a product that we can hit the streets with. You know, now the work really begins, because that's when we have to take it, and first thing we'll have to do is train the trainers, but then get people through it. And our hope is, you know, that this will not only give the customer a better experience, but now that we have actual rules, now that we have actual instructions, if you will, it'll be much easier to teach. It'll be teach to consistent standard, if you will. It's going to be something hopefully we can get guys in, get a little pride instilled in them. We see lots of positive, lots of reasons for these to exist, but it's time to get moving.